This video is going to be going over spawning mechanics of the Pillager outpost farm. Due to 1.21 coming out soon, these farms are going to be way more useful. You'll be able to get ominous bottles and take on ominous trials, and this is also how you'll end up getting the mace. Of course, you'll still be able to use these bottles to take on a normal raid in a village, and I'm also certain that raid farms from now on will require players to constantly drink these bottles. So it's another good reason to build a farm. For raid farms will now require them. And those are quite nice farms to have for the emeralds and small amounts of redstone they do give you. To my utter surprise, I was not able to find a video describing these mechanics in this much depth that I have laid out here. So I thought I'd do it. So this is my attempt at making that. The mechanics are really simple, and once you know which area you're working in, it's very similar to just making any other mod farm. So I'm using a mod called Mini HUD to find the bounding boxes, as you can see here. As far as I'm aware, the mechanics surrounding this have not changed in 1.21. Only the dropping of the ominous bottle has changed. I'm nearly certain it's impossible to find the bounding box, the exact bounding box, without this mod, because on this side it's sticking out one, and on this side as well. I'm not sure why, but there's two bounding boxes here. So this purple bounding box is just for the outpost, and then it sticks out a little bit. I'm not sure why. There's a second bounding box that sticks out. I'm not sure why. But this also dictates the spawning area. So it's something to keep in mind. The south and the east. I'm not sure if it's always the south and the east, but on this outpost specifically, it's the south and the east are sticking out by one block more than the rest. So the bounding box of the outpost here is 15 by 23, and it's quite easy to find this bounding box. It sticks out by one from all the solid blocks on the outpost. So all these wood posts here, it sticks out by one from them. And then it simply has a center on the center of the roof, which is easy to find with these 5 blocks here. Go to the third one. It's on this side too. And then the extents are 2 blocks up from here. So there's 2 blocks up. And then the bottom block here is simply this birch floor here is the bottom block of the bounding box. This bounding box is not very helpful, but it can be, especially if you're not using any mods or tools to help you. So this outer bounding box is the true bounding box of the structure, as you can see. This bounding box is 48 by 48 blocks, and it's 30 blocks high. So these blocks are quite easily detectable. The bottom is simply these birch planks here, and the top is simply 9 blocks above the top of the outpost, or 7 blocks above the top of the bounding box for the outpost. And then that will be the top of this bounding box. It's useful to find this just to go in steps. This bounding box is where things start to get wonky though, because here on the northeast direction, it comes out and it meets the corner at 26 blocks, but it needs to go out one more in the east direction, which is strange, and I think that's caused by the secondary bounding box here. Here you don't have that problem. It stops at 24 blocks here, which is perfect. So on the west-north direction, you don't have to worry about that bounding box being fine. It's also fine on the very outermost, which I'll talk about in a second. On the southwest, it's also a bit wonky. It needs to go one more block out south. What's strange about this side is that it's on the 25th block, as opposed to that side, it's on the 24th. Alright, so now that we've talked about all of the innermost bounding boxes, that are a bit easier to find, especially with tools, this outer bounding box is the one I cannot find very much information about on the internet as it stands right now. This bounding box is 72 by 72 by, I believe, 54. This outermost bounding box is 72 by 72 by 54. The extents of it are quite difficult to find. So the easiest way, I would say, is to just go out 36 blocks from the center, on each side from the center of your pillager outpost, and you'll get most of it, and none of it will be unspawnable for pillagers. So I would say do that. But if you want to look at these numbers and the directions that they say, this might give you some sort of clue on what is going on here, because I frankly don't have a clue. I don't have time to figure this out, and it doesn't matter for the farm I'm using, because the extents of the bounding box aren't really used in my farm design. What is important for my farm design is this. So the top of this bounding box is 20 blocks above the top of the pillager outpost. That's a very important number for later on. So this Y level right here, this is block 109. This Y layer is very important. Any solid blocks on here will spawn pillagers. And any solid block in any of this will spawn a pillager too. I'm not going to be developing a farm like this, but it is more efficient to have your farm lower in the world, I've heard. So the bottom of this is exactly 13 blocks below the planks here. And all these solid blocks will spawn pillagers. Through extensive testing, I found these ones do not. Not that extensive of testing. So that is basically it for the main bounding box and how to find that. Hopefully this has been helpful. The rest of this video is going to be me messing around with a farm idea, which is probably very inefficient because I'm not the best at making efficient farms. I just know how to make them when I know how things work. Hopefully, if you are like me, this has helped you know how this works. So these are really the two platforms that matter. This is the upper platform. Mobs can spawn up here. And this is the lower platform. Mobs can spawn down here. And any block in between these two, mobs will spawn on too. There's a few things to consider before you even begin constructing a farm. You may want to build a perimeter, like I've just cheated in here. You might want to light up the area around it, or you might want to build a farm like the one I'm going to be building first. Any of these options are good. The way pillager spawning works is it's dependent on the mob cap. So pillagers will just keep spawning and spawning and spawning until the mob cap is full. But obviously if there's caves loaded in, the mob cap will be filled up by all the mobs just standing around in those caves waiting for you. So you want to ideally build it as high up as possible and then have an AFK spot as high up as possible from there. And then you wouldn't have to do any spawn proofing to minimize the build effort. So the first step to building a farm like this is having a lure, in this case an iron golem, in the center of a cage, which the pillagers cannot get to, but they will try, and they will get as close as they can. If we were to open up a fake passageway, like so, they will all rush to it, and they will fall through and die. But there is a small possibility of them standing off to the side like this. To prevent this, you can use either trapdoors, or I like to use slabs. And now, there is no chance for them to ever go into a position that would get fixed by another one. There's no possible way for them to get into a position where they can kill this iron golem. So the next step is to repeat this on all four sides. This cage is simply 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks out, and a full circle around here. 6 blocks out on every side. This side and this side. You'll want to make sure that the blocks inside of the corral here for the iron golem are non-spawnable, such as glass. That's a transparent block. And you want to make sure that the blocks you use for the spawning platform are solid blocks. You're going to go 10 blocks out from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. On every side. And you're going to make a square and remove these three corners, these 3 corner blocks. I guess you could keep them, but they're kind of unnecessary. And then all of this glass here, you don't really need it. I'll just remove it quick. So now I've removed the glass up there. But you can see as it stands right now, all of the pillagers that we're getting, oh no. So there's actually a problem with the last design where they could get stuck on this, and if they're just right here, they can actually reach the iron golem. So there's a very simple fix to that. Simply move these catchers out by 1 block. And then that should fix the farm. But you can see, as it stands right now, all of our pillagers are just falling, and they're dying. But that's not really so good for us. I'm not in the new version because I'm on a modded client, but as you can see, they're dropping their ominous banners just as they would their ominous bottles. They do not require a player to kill them for them to drop an ominous bottle, which was quite surprising for me to figure out. But that is indeed the case. So this is block 106. The AFK spot is going to be at block 232. So you're going to want to go 126 blocks above that birch block that the iron golem is standing on. And that will be the AFK spot. Right here, nothing can spawn besides on that platform right there. So all of these pillagers are going to spawn. As I said, as of right now. Oh no. So we need to go down by 2 more blocks. So 124 blocks above that birch block is where your AFK spot will need to be. Now you can see they get just low enough for what we're going to do then. So the next step of this farm, wildly inefficient, probably a multitude of better reasons, better ways to do this. But I'm using this method. I would personally rather use a entity crushing method, but on the server I play on, there is no entity cramming. So I'm going to have to make do with this. So we're going to kill the pillagers with magma, which is wildly inefficient and slow. But you can see now they do not despawn, and they safely rest on the magma until they die, and then hopefully drop those ominous bottles for us. So all that's left to finish this farm is some simple item collection. So we've covered up all of these magma blocks to make sure items don't spill out. And then we're simply going to use minecarts with hoppers to collect the items. One more thing, make sure that your spawning spot is a non-solid block such as glass, because solid blocks higher up in the world will make spawning in that chunk slower. So this is the finished farm. This is the item collection system I came up with. It's simply a minecart that goes between the 4 locations. And these hoppers here, which you can drop off 1 item every time it passes by one. And because the only items that this farm produces when the pillagers are not player killed is the only items are ominous bottles and those banners, this should be adequate storage to get you at least a stack of every level of bottle before it fills up. And you can always, merge these hopper lines and create more elaborate storage, or sorted storage, since ominous bottles do stack up to 64. Anyway, this has been my villager farm and bounding box explanation. I hope it's been useful to somebody out there, and I hope you can get some of those ominous bottles and take on a ominous trial 1.21. Cheers.